Hey guys, KILLZONE here, again with another Cavalry tips video. Some of you saw the video I posted about using the Cavalry Lance once I got to 100 stars with that thing. Still can't put it down, by the way. It's just so much better than the sword in terms of its hitbox and range and all that. But basically, I got a lot of great comments, thanks for all of that. A lot of great notes on people who use the rifle a little bit more, so I've kind of improved my playing and game style thanks to your guys' input as well. But the next thing that kind of came up is, people wanting to know, how do you survive when you're attacking tanks and vehicles, and how do you kind of effectively support your team without dying by these beasts with a one-shot kill usually. And so this video will kind of go through the approach that I take, some of the ways I think about positioning my horse, some of the ways I think about using the grenades, some of the ways I think about individual tanks and their nuances. And so you'll kind of see all of that through here. One thing I'll say is, throughout this video, you're going to see mostly my successes and not my failures. Attacking a tank is risky no matter what. Even when I feel like I'm in a good position and have a good, view and good area to attack, I would say I still, 30-25% of the time walk away with a death on my hand because the guy just pulls the trigger at the right time or whatever. So take all this with a grain of salt. It might help you out, you might still die. The first thing I'll say is bump your minimap zoom up to 235% and your minimap size up to 135, or at least that's what I play with. As you can kind of see here, you get a lot of juicy details about where this tank is going after I spotted him. I can kind of follow him through the tracks, and it really kind of makes sense at the speed that your horse is moving. I know for a lot of people in infantry, they like to have the map a lot closer, but for cavalry, I think it just is imperative when you're fighting these vehicles. And you'll notice I'm not even zoomed out on my map for the most of these clips, because a lot of them were taken more than 2 months ago, which is when I first realized how useful the minimap zoom really is. But I promise you, you'll get so much more out of playing cavalry with the minimap zoomed out and a larger minimap itself. I even do it on infantry myself, to be honest. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to really get into, and maybe it's obvious, but you have to stay out of sight of the vehicle driver. And, of course you don't want to be in the view, but you have to know what their view looks like, either from a third perspective view or from, first person, which a lot of people tankers don't really use. But play around in the tank for a little bit, in different tanks, to know what their vision looks like. It'll give you a lot better sense of how to make them work a little harder to see you. Here in this case, what I'm doing is I'm using the sand dunes to block this guy's vision, so I force him to kind of have to turn his turret and move his vehicle around a little bit, which is, doable in a light tank, but really difficult in some of the heavier tanks. And so by doing that, I'm able to kind of duck and dive, weave throughout cover. That's honestly the number one thing I'll say, is only engage a tank when you know that you have the right cover around it to support you blocking his vision. And a lot of times that's a matter of knowing how far you are away from a hill and kind of have an internal sense of, can I throw my grenades, count to 7 seconds and get back to that hill? The reason you want to do 7 seconds is because your grenades take 13-ish seconds to respawn, so you want to get back to cover and then immediately swing by with the amount of time you need to both let your grenades cool down, but also stay out of his vision for as long as really possible. And so I make these little loops is a lot of times what I end up doing, especially if I'm lucky enough to disable their track. I know that tank will be stationary, and I'll be able to make a kind of 13-second pass in which I take 7 seconds to get back and then 7 seconds to re-engage, all the while I'm in cover most of that time. And this is where your minimap's going to be the most useful. So again, here's a clip where I have a really small minimap, but usually what I'm doing when I'm in those 7 seconds in that loop is I'm watching around for other enemies to make sure that no one's going to try and stop my path to the tank, and trying to get a sense of what direction the tank is facing. So that's what you're going to see a lot in this clip is, you can tell this tank's looking right at me and he knows I'm here. So really what I do is I rely on the fact that he's probably going to D and he just wants to ignore me for a second. I know if I ping him, though, he'll probably start to pay attention to me. So here's where you can see that minimap at 235% really does a lot of work because I can see exactly where he's looking, and I'm really far away from him. So he's just waiting to see where I'm going. I can tell if he's spotting me or not based on whether the angle of his icon on the minimap changes to match mine or not. So basically I'm watching to see if he spotted me or not, and that helps me a lot in determining what angle I'm going to come in at. So I know he doesn't know where I'm at right now based on the fact that he hadn't spotted me. So I'm able to come at him from the side. I start to get in my little loop now. And you really want to, like, one of the reasons you want to use these loops is because it lets you get as far away as possible from the tank in those moments where you're vulnerable. And by that I mean when you don't have grenades. And so I do a little loop. I come back at him. I saw on my map that there's a couple guys. I actually got spooked by the sound of the horse there. That's why I swung my lance at him. But I'm able to see visually who's able to potentially stop me or not, and finally go in and get that vehicle kill once I finish everyone off. So, of course, imperative to all of this is always be spotting. Even while you're not actively engaged in the tank, if you're spotting, people will show up on your mini-map, and you'll know kind of how to engage them a little bit better. Alright, so my next tip is to kind of curve as you throw, and this really relies on you actively doing that 13-14 second countdown in your head, because essentially what I do is I get up close enough to the tank that right when I know my grenades are going to respawn, I start to circle back around. And I do this because it throws off the aiming of the tanker, who either expects I'm going to come a little bit closer, he doesn't know which way I'm going to curve. Essentially, every time I throw a grenade, I'm curving around immediately as I do so. And you can kind of see that again here. Again, you're looking at this mini-map. I wish I had zoomed out so that I knew what this tank was doing. And right now, I'm just kind of going on blind luck and a vague sense of where I think this guy's going to go. But here again, I'm throwing and curving at the same time. And it really makes me, or the only reason I can do that is because in my head I'm counting 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000. If you saw my other video, you might remember I do this to the pattern of the hooves hitting the ground. I find that it actually matches a 1 second cadence fairly closely. So I'll just kind of combine some of those thoughts and talk you through what's happening here. I saw him turn to the right, so I wanted to get behind him since I know he won't be able to see where those grenades came from. He turned back around, used smoke. What I know he's going to do is go over that hill. So I spot him, make sure I'm tracking him for a little bit. Saw him trying to go up that path, cut around behind him again. Essentially, again, the rule is just never be in front of the tank. It's kind of obvious, but it does take some practice to learn. Kind of like the way a boxer will look at the shoulders to know, where a punch is going. You have to look at, the way the tank is moving to kind of get a sense of where you want to position your own horse. And then here I know he's spotting me, so I have to stay behind this and only expose myself exactly when I have 2 grenades to throw. Otherwise he's going to get me. Luckily I timed that well enough to get right back behind the hill again. A big part of it is kind of just knowing the distance to be away from the tank so that they're going to have a hard... You can reach them with grenades, but they're going to be hard pressed to actually hit you. So here's what I'm kind of illustrating here is I just try to stay at this distance when I'm in the open and I don't have cover. I'm still taking hits because this guy knows that I'll get some splash damage. But as long as I stay at that distance away, I can get enough of a runway to go up on him and throw my grenades and still make that curve I was talking about. Alright, so now I'll kind of talk about where to throw your grenades and where on the tank to kind of try to place them. Not that you'll always have the opportunity to perfectly aim your grenade tosses, but when you do, know a couple things. If you hit the back of most tanks, it's just going to bounce right off. So what you're really trying to aim for is the squishiest part, which is the side of the tank. And more often than not, your target's going to be moving, so you want to kind of, throw where the target's going to be, not where they're at. I guess that makes that's a little obvious, but when it comes to fighting tanks, you know that even if you overshoot with your grenade, you can still kind of get a little splash damage. Another great place to aim is just for the tracks. I think if you are able to, you can bounce some things off surfaces like sand a little bit, or at least know that you'll land in a place that, even if it doesn't directly make contact, you'll get enough splash damage to disable the tracks, and of course then you no longer have to chase anyone down like I'm trying to do here. I wrote down a note about being persistent, especially with RD trucks. You can kind of expect that you'll spook them at some point, and most drivers will just kind of turn tail and try to get back to safety. Usually the problem is they don't know how safe they really, or they think something is safe when it's not, and here I just get right back behind the enemy lines, and pretty sure I go over here and finish this guy off. Yeah, but anyway, you know, you're trying to aim for the sides of the tank. I also think in my head mentally, like I'm trying to score a basketball goal with grenades and land them right on the top, because the top end of all tanks is very, very squishy, as opposed to the back, which is very hard and will make your grenades bounce off more often than not. So let's see how much of that I actually apply here. You saw me throw a couple grenades at him. I'm staying far away enough from him that I can either tell if he's tracking me or if he needs to shoot at me. He's got to take a difficult shot. So there, I saw he shot at me, so I have a second to come in, throw some grenades while I know he's reloading his canister. I'm ducking and diving a little bit. He probably expects me at this point to circle back around and get a more clear shot. But I'm going to spend a little extra time just to make sure I'm extra safe. Okay, here we are. I'm not throwing grenades at the back of him because that'll just bounce off. I have to wait. I'm going to ignore that dude in favor of hitting this guy in the side. And let's see, can I finish it all off? Oh, wait. I remember this clip. I threw my third grenade and totally botched it. So I'll explain this a little bit later, but you have a third grenade by jumping off and using the grenade in your Cavalry dismounted kit. Oh man, I missed 2 grenades there as well. So this is embarrassing, but you know, I've had to wait another full 14-second countdown to even get another shot on him. And what I'm doing here is hugging the walls, making sure he's not coming immediately there, and then he just exposed himself and got himself killed. Alright, well that worked out then. But really because he wasn't being a very smart tanker, and one of the clear signs of a smart tanker is someone who's squatted up with a team around him, supporting him, especially a repairman around him. So if you see something like that, you're not going to win a one-on-one. The repairman is just going to outpace you in terms of damage and repair, so you're not ever going to destroy the tank when a repairman's on him. So the next tip is about always getting the repairman. And you have to make some tough decisions. You have to put yourself at risk and try to run in front of the guy there. But it's for this reason that this is one of my favorite clips, honestly, is being able to take on a fully squatted up tank is no small feat, and you're going to lose way more often than you're going to win that battle. But always take out the repairman first. You have to do that. You're not going to get any damage on the tank otherwise. And again, when it comes to taking out tanks, there's that idea of persistence, and you have to keep getting it done, even if, again, smart tankers will have a whole crew, so they'll have more than just a support guy. They'll have maybe a medic come in, make sure the guys don't stay on the ground too long, and then they'll be shooting at you as you approach as well. Again, you got to take out that repairman. It's just not going to happen any other way. So yeah, those are the most challenging combats I get into, and I'm very positive I've never done it, as solo cavalry. I've always had the support of other teammates kind of pelting with AT rockets and etc. So this is another one of my favorite battles against tanks, in which I kind of can use it to talk about staying focused on one tank as far as doing all your damage. You're going to have other targets that come up on you, and they're going to distract you. They're going to try and kill you. And if it's safe and possible, and you're not going to immediately die, then you got to stay focused on that first tank. So here comes another one. I know he's going to be looking at me. He may even have me spotted. So what I do is I ping the land ship that I originally got. The heavy tank lost his spot on me, I know, because he went behind that hill, so I'm staying out of his view, and I'm just doing everything I said before, staying far enough away that I can curve when I need to throw my grenades. I'm even going to spend a little bit time going far out in the distance here, just to get a little bit of difficulty to that guy, that heavy tank shooting at me. Landship knows I'm here. He's firing his anti-tank rifle at me because he's whatever variant, I can't remember. But at least I disabled him, so I know he's not going to move. So now it's a matter of just circling her back far enough away from him that when I can finally come back around here, I can ping him a couple times, see how he reacts. Heavy tank forgot about me now, so I'm kind of just going to ignore him and use my last little loop to swing back here, get this guy before he can... Well, he did actually get me. He knocked me down 60 points, but that's what an anti-tank gun will do if you don't hit your target directly. Alright, so here's a quick tip that can be useful in certain cases. So as you know, you have 2 grenades as mounted cavalry, but while dismounted, you also have a single grenade that does not respawn automatically, but can be very useful once you know that the enemy has been disabled. So in situations in which I have to get that kill and I'm fairly certain the tanker is not going to jump out, what I do is I dismount and throw my last grenade at him. So I'm actually going to kind of use that tactic here because this is a land ship I take out entirely on my own, if I remember. So let's see what happens here. I'm using the smoke to kind of cover me a little bit as I just give myself enough time to get a good approach. I don't want him to see me immediately, but I want him because I have to run at him head on. Grenades are actually pretty good about hitting the front of the tank. They're not going to bounce off often, but of course it's the riskiest approach, so that's why you saw me waiting for a little bit and hanging in the back at the beginning of this clip. So now he's moving. I'm going to throw where he's going to be, not where he's at, and you saw me hit him on the top. Those were my basketball shots. For the most part, I can usually ignore the side turret gunners, unless it's a heavy tank with dual in the back. The dual ones will kind of shred you up. There you go. So I see he's disabled. Once I know he's disabled, I know he can't repair in time, because the risk is that, especially with a support teammate that was right there, if I don't kill him immediately, I risk having to wait another cycle or two of 14-second cooldown for my grenades before I can finally kill that guy. Alright, so we're just about done here. There's just a few kind of like nuanced notes that I wanted to share, even if I didn't have the game capture footage to talk about it. So I can just kind of list them here. They're mostly pretty intuitive, but that's actually one here is the Mark V. You see how that side spawn soon? It's actually one of the things you really have to pay attention to make sure you know that variant in particular, because it acts just like a howitzer cannon that can one-shot kill you. Easy enough to pay attention to once you get used to what the side turrets look like. But yeah, you can't approach those guys from the sides in the same way you would do in a lot of other tanks. Let's see, another note. You've seen a lot of these clips involve me fighting light tanks, especially the flanker type. You know the difference between ones that have the howitzer cannon, which is one-shot kill, but also the flanker type, which has the rapid-fire canisters with a lot of splash damage. And as I understand, a lot of people kind of consider that one of the best tanks to fight infantry, and maybe one of the best tanks overall in the game. But I actually really enjoy fighting those as cavalry because they're the easiest to dodge. Those cannons, that rapid-fire cannon just only hits you maybe 10% of the time if you're just doing a little back and forth with your control pad to dodge them. And so they're generally the easiest that I find on the cavalry. Another thing I'd say about light tanks is the drivers have a tendency to wait until you're right up on them or about to throw your grenades at you, and then quickly move back because they're pretty fast and they can dodge grenades that way. So I usually make an effort to get a little closer to them than I normally do with other tanks, just because I know a lot of smart light tank drivers know how to avoid grenade tosses from cavalry. And then the last thing took me a while to realize is the Mark V like tank hunter variant, the one that has the anti-tank gun instead of the howitzer cannon. You can actually shoot from the front and the back, and a lot of tankers know this, but it took me a while to realize that I can't just sneak up on those guys from the back. The intelligent drivers will switch back there and just kind of immediately kill you with that shot. Alright, so that's it. Hope this has been informative. Thanks for bearing with my voice, because I was under the weather with a little bit of a cold when I recorded this. But I hope you picked up some things that at least give you a little bit of a better approach to fighting tanks. Like I said, you know, you're still gonna die when you, if you're really taking the risk to engage really heavy vehicles. But hopefully you die less now. I was really inspired by everybody who followed along and commented and subscribed to my channel, so please continue to do that, like and share. I've now been inspired to kind of create a little bit more. I'll show you things like, you know, what are the top kind of 5 assault types you run into as cavalry? What are the 5 types of medic players? What are the 5 types of scouts you run into? Hopefully that can help your gameplay as well. I mean, I've been gaming for, you know, 15 plus years, and I just love this class. So stay tuned for more, and Godspeed, fellow riders.
Come on, all. Giddy up. Light the
We
way.
have lost objective Freddy.